Okay, thanks for joining me. So in this task, I'm going to be giving you a bit of a refresher and a bit of a reminder of the task that we completed, which was LV04 task 2, which is your suspension task. So this task in particular is a dual task, so it's got two parts to it. So we're actually going to remove and refit a suspension strut from a vehicle, and then we're going to remove and refit the suspension coil spring from the strut. Okay, so where do we start? Okay, let's have a look at the board. So as always, we would start our practical lessons off, as we always do, with a practical risk assessment. Now we do that normally by completing our 5 watts board, but as I'm demonstrating this task, I'm going to be doing our risk assessment as we go through the task. Okay, so after we do our risk assessments in the morning to make sure that our environment we're working in is safe, we would then move on to our PPE list. So we only wear PPE that's relevant to the task that we're doing. So in this particular task, I'm going to be wearing my steel toe cap boots, my overalls, my gloves, my goggles, barrier cream, and of course an ID badge. Now, I've put there why do I wear it, because on our task sheet it says PPE worn and special precautions taken. So there's a reason why I'm wearing this PPE, and I need you to tell me why it would be relevant for us to wear each part of that PPE. Okay, so let's have a little look then. So let's go over to the task sheet. So if we go to our IMI ePortfolio task sheet, and here we are. So this is exactly how you see it. So as always, we start off our task sheet with our vehicle information. So we need our registration number, approximate year, make, model, and VIN number. Okay, so we then move on to the customer request, which on this particular task, as I said before, is a dual task. So we remove and refit a front suspension strut, remove and refit a suspension spring. Okay, and then we're going to complete a brief description of the work carried out. Okay, so let's have a little look now at the vehicle. Okay, so the vehicle I've chosen for today is our Renault Clio in the workshop. Okay, so the first part of the task is to remove the suspension strut. Okay, so in order for us to do that, we would always start our strip down at the bottom end of the vehicle. So as you can see, just for the ease of the time, I've already taken our wheel off. So we have a little look in our wheel arch. Okay, we've got multiple components here that we're going to have to remove as we do it. So I would start by disconnecting anything that could break, such as my ABS wire. So I would then remove that out of the way. I would then move on to something like my suspension drop link, which is here. So there's 2 bolts. So on this particular one, I would use an Allen key and either a Swan neck spanner or a socket to remove them. My caliper brake hose, and then that would leave me then with my McPherson strut mounting bolts. On this particular vehicle, that's a double 17mm headed bolt. Okay, so we would then, as you can see, with rust, so on further faults found, we've got rusty thread, so we might need to wire brush, we might need to use some WD-40. We would then remove our 2 pinch bolts on our strut. Okay, so once that's removed, we then need to look at the top of the vehicle. Okay, so if we look inside our strut top housing, we've got our strut top mounting. Okay, now we've got 4 bolts here to consider, right? We've got 3 on the outside and 1 in the middle. Okay, so at this point now, I've got to stress to you, we would never ever remove that middle bolt, okay, without having our suspension spring clamped up. Okay, so we would now look at removing any dirt or debris around here. And as you can see, we've got leaves, we've got all sorts going on inside there. One thing that you may come across at certain times of the year, maybe something like an angry wasp. So we do need to make sure that we're considering that. And again, that needs to be put into our PPE list. Okay, so I'm going to remove my 3 outer bolts to make this vehicle safe to work on. And once I remove them 3 bolts, that will now allow me to remove my suspension strut. Okay, so now the suspension strut is off the vehicle, we'll then move over to our spring compressor. Okay, so now I'm actually physically going to be working on a vehicle, so one thing I need to consider now is safety as always. So this is the part where my safety glasses are now down. Okay, so suspension spring compressor. Okay, this is pneumatics, it's air operated and it's hydraulic. So before we work on any type of equipment or machinery like this, we would always carry out our visual inspection on the hydraulic systems or the airline. Now I've done that and I'm happy with the condition of this. Now, because this is a hydraulic system, this is safety checked. So again, on our special tools used and any special precautions taken, we would always double check that this is safety checked, okay? Not only is my compressor safety checked, but my chain is as well and it's load rated. Okay, so struts off the car now, it's into our compressor. Now this is a very, very crucial part of the task because we need to now make sure that we've got our spring clamped inside the wells of our clamp. Okay, once we've done that, we put a chain around it. So worst case, and the spring snapped when we compressed it, the spring would catch that for us. Okay, some garages and different variations of this would possibly have a cage around it. So once we've got it in and we're happy and it's safe and secure, we would then compress that spring. Once we compress that spring, we can then, and then only, remove our top mounting bolt, okay, or nut. So in this particular case, we've got a big nut on the top. Once we remove that, we can then take the strut top mounting off, release the pressure from our spring, and then remove our spring and shock absorber assembly. Okay, so let's move over to the table and have a look at what we've got. Okay, so we've actually got our spring off the vehicle here now. In order for us to get to that strut top mounting, we have to take off what's known as the scuttle panel, okay, and our wiper arms, okay, to get access to the strut top. Okay, so here's my spring as I've got it off. So what do we do on a spring when we take it off? We check its overall condition. We check the ends and make sure we've got no cracks, no splits, because that's common where the springs snap, okay? Now, part of our technical data is asking us for our spring load rating. Now, it's very hard to find that information normally. Certainly is unavailable on Autodata, okay? So on this particular task, we're going to list this as having a green, white, and blue dot. Okay, so that's what we're going to add in our technical data. Okay. As for our strut, checks we would do is oil leaks. Okay, we would check the general condition of the damper, make sure it's not any cross threading. We haven't got any leaks on the hydraulic side. Okay, and just general condition. That's a brand new shocker, that is, so it's really nice. Okay, so once we've done that and it all goes back together, okay, we go back to the vehicle. But when we go back to the vehicle, okay, there's a few things that we have to consider when we put it back together that would be different from taking it apart. And that mainly is our torquing, okay? So we undo our bolts with our sockets and ratchets, we put them back together using a torque wrench to make sure they're tight into manufacturer's specification. Okay, so if we look at our board and we look at our technical data, the technical data your task sheet is asking you for is bolt torque. So on this particular vehicle, we're going to use our road wheels, which is 110 Newton meters. The spring rating, as mentioned before, is blue, green and white. Okay. The special tools used, including any calibration required on this job, was a torque wrench, and I checked the calibration sticker before I used it. And my spring compressor, I checked the safety tag on it. Okay, and the final would be our further faults found. Okay, now we can always find things that are wrong with these, maybe a rusty spring, shock absorber, or any issues that we might find along the way with the vehicle itself. Okay, maybe broken ABS wires, that type of thing. So I really want to see that in the further faults found. Okay, so once we've completed our task sheet, again, brief description of the work carried out, and then we would then submit that to the assessor that you did the task with. Okay, I do hope that helps you. Thank you very much.